Recently, I played through Doom Eternal with the help of some friends, and these are our real thoughts after finishing the game. I like this game a lot. I don't think it's perfect. I think that compared to Doom 2016, there is more of everything in Doom Eternal, for better and worse. I do think this is a lot better than Doom 2016. There are certain things I think maybe could have done a little bit better, like the difficulty curve is a lot higher than 2016 because you get so much new stuff. But that also means that once you get used to that difficulty curve, it feels a lot better to get in the groove than 2016 because you're doing a lot more. Where 2016 was sort of basic. It's like you get your guns, you can shoot enemies, you know how to dodge enemies, whatever. And then the big unique thing in 2016 was the glory kills. So as long as you can aim at enemies, dodge their attacks, and use glory kills, you're pretty much set for the entire game. But with Doom Eternal, they introduce the flame belch and the ice bomb and the dashing and the breaking enemy parts and quick swap and all this stuff. And they do that within the first 2 hours of the game. It feels more like tossing a baby bird off the nest and hoping it can fly. And it's really satisfying once you get it. But for that initial drop, it's like, holy shit, this is really fucking hard. I was just playing on Hurt Me Plenty and I was getting my ass kicked at the beginning until I got used to it. Once I got used to it, then it was smooth sailing, and I probably could have turned the difficulty up at that point because I ended the game with 12 extra lives, and that feels like an excessive amount of extra lives. But it was so much fun to get to that point. I think there are way too many currencies used for upgrade trees. There's the suit upgrades, which I found to be mostly useless. There was the weapon upgrades, which were really nice. There was also the mastery tokens, which you get a couple of them throughout the game towards the end. And then there was the blue shard. I can't even remember what those things are called that you use towards health, ammo, armor upgrades.
Oh, the blue shards myth.
Blue shards myth. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the only one I really enjoyed. The weapon upgrades are good, but they're pretty basic in terms of upgrade trees. Like every game does that. In 2016, you just got is like, okay, do you want to choose health, ammo, or armor upgrade? It's like, okay, I'll choose that. Whatever. It's basic. But this one, it's like, all right, I'm choosing the health upgrade on this upgrade tree so I can get closer to the third upgrade of this slot. So it's like, oh, now anytime ammo and health spills out of an enemy, it'll magnetize to me. Or anytime I have full health and I gain more health, then that goes back towards my blood punch or something like that. And so those were like really meaningful upgrades, and they felt more fun than just a typical upgrade because of the fact that you could get 3 upgrades in one. Oh, they're called Sentinel Crystals. Okay.
I agree with most of what you said. There's more of everything. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. Definitely felt like the soundtrack overall wasn't not quite the same oomph, but still wonderful. And then the pacing, definitely, the curve was kind of insane. Doom 2016 was not that hard on ultraviolence. I died here and there, but wasn't that hard. And then on this, I was having a real rough time playing ultraviolence. I ended up downgrading to Hurt Me Plenty, I don't know, a third of the way through the game. Don't get me wrong, the pacing of having to rely on getting glory kills for health, using your flamethrower for armor, and then the chainsaw for ammo, it made it really interesting, but it's too much, and it's really easy. The moment that you start dying, it's really easy for everything to just go downhill at once, and the moment you lose your groove, it's really easy to just get overwhelmed because the difficulty curve is kind of insane. But the level design was super cool. Parkour was pretty mediocre and weird, but there's a lot of fun stuff in the game. It's a really good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely too much for the upgrades. It's not even confusing. It's just like, oh, cool, another one of these 7 different types of tokens I can have.
I also realized pretty much immediately when I was playing through this, when I did the Real Thoughts on 2016, I said that I didn't remember what they did to this game to make finding necessary collectibles, like keycards and things, easier, because I hadn't played it in about a year. But then immediately when you start playing this, it's like, oh, they made it easier to find because it glows, it floats, and it spins. It's not hidden on a body in the environment to be sort of realistic. It's just there, and that makes it so much easier to find everything. Yeah, colorblind proof, exactly. It's idiot proof, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, even knowing that you have color blindness issues, even then, when it took you super long to find that key card in the I'm just gonna call it the lava level, in 2016. I didn't think that was because, you're colorblind. I just thought that was, that key card is really easy to miss. And it took me a good 15, 20 minutes of searching before I was able to find it myself. So having stuff float off the ground it's not bad. Doom Eternal is definitely going for a more arcadey game feel. It's not supposed to be all that realistic, which is fine.
I absolutely love having easy collectibles. Yeah, I know there are probably people who are like, it was too easy to find all this. I like it. It makes me feel accomplished. I don't care if I'm a little baby playing it. It makes it fun.
Yeah.
It was really nice. A lot of the times when I play through games for completely accurate summary, I feel like if I try to go off and do any of the side stuff, I'm mostly wasting time. But with this, all the side stuff is just a little bit off the path, and it feels small amounts of satisfying to go and grab them and then just keep going, and it doesn't feel like a big detour to go get one thing and then go back to the main path. It's like, I'm going to jump backwards, grab this thing, and then just keep running. Or like any of the little gore nests, some of those were really fucking tough. I think there was one of them I just gave up on.
The challenge gates. Oh, man.
The challenge gates can get really tough. I only did one of those during my cast playthrough, but when I did those the first time I played through Eternal, I did all of them, and man, they get tough really quick.
I think there's only one level where collectible hunting is really annoying. That's Karis Nabad, which I think is probably the worst level in the game. But yeah, level design is really nice, and it's definitely nice that because of the stage that Doom Eternal sets and that demons are invading Earth, is that, well, now you can go to all these different places and it doesn't have to be the same reddish Martian facility that you're fighting through the entire time.
Oh yeah, the level design in this was really nice about having different colors. Like Doom 2016 was very much, you're either out on Mars, which is red, or you're inside, which is either kind of grayish silver or yellow. And that was pretty much the entire color scheme of 2016. But this one's got all kinds of natural foresty areas. Their interiors are a lot more colorful. Even when you go back to Mars, there's different aesthetic there. I know there was a lot of purple and blue on Mars, I think, when you get down into the Mars core.
They had a lot of purple down there. Thankfully, it wasn't that purple goo.
And then when you get to Urdak had a really cool aesthetic of red and white in space.
In 2016, I know you said the game had a very red color scheme. If it wasn't for the UAC facilities on Mars, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between Hell and Mars in that game just because of how similar they're designed to each other. In Eternal, you wouldn't even have to tell me that a level takes place on the Sentinel's home world because the art design is so strong that you just look at something, you instantly know where it fits and the game's geography.
And they really up the hellishness, if that makes sense, of hell with things like anytime you get to a hell area, there's thousands of corpses that you're just walking over, or all kinds of bloody areas and things like that. Super Gore Nest especially had a ton of, and it's things that you would notice running through it, but pretty much only if you're gonna look down at it, because otherwise it's just like, it's just kind of fleshy bits. It's like, oh no, there's bodies that we're walking over.
That room where they introduced the buff totem in the Super Gore Nest. When that fight was over, the first time I played through, I took a little bit to look around because I wanted to see where the other teleports would take me. And I realized that entire room is made out of human corpses, and some of them look like they're still moving. I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely a very, oh shit kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and then Doom 2016, it was like, little bit fleshy looking.
Oh man, if we're going to talk about Super Gore Nest, we got to talk about the fucking purple goo.
Oh that shit.
I hate the purple goo so much.
It's like, I understand it from a game design perspective, but it should have never been added.
I know what they were doing, slowing the player down to the point where they will appreciate all that movement when they don't have it anymore. But oh my god, it was number one, it was used way too much. And it just wasn't mechanically interesting. It's literally just like, let's make the player slow and not use any of their abilities. What's fun about that? What's interesting about that?
It may have worked better if they had, like in 2016, because you don't get double jump until maybe a third of the way through the game. Once you get it, you really appreciate it because you know what it's like to play without it. In Eternal, you have like one level without the dash and blood punch, so you won't spend as much time without them, but you understand like why those tools are in your arsenal and how it was actually kind of harder to fight without them. But just being like, no, you can't jump and you can't move as fast, you can't dash anymore when you're stuck in the purple goo, it's not fun. And every time I got into the Purple Goo, I wanted to get out of it as quick as possible.
And speaking of the dash, that's something I gotta shout out as just being a fucking phenomenal addition to Doom. Because once you get your stride, having, a tyrant or something run up to you, and you just last minute dodge out of the way, come up from behind, hit him with the super shotty, and go for a glory kill, it feels so good. That has to be one of the best additions to a fairly standard shooter experience, I guess I'd say, for 2016, because even though it's very different, it was pretty standard shooter. And then they turned this into crazy movement slugfest going on.
They improved the glory kill system from 2016. With 2016, basically the only reason to do a glory kill was health. A lot of the time I would end up doing it just because it would be better than wasting some ammo on a demon. But with Eternal, glory killing an enemy brings back your blood punch, and your blood punch can be used to do a super punch on enemies. So there was an actual reason to use them instead of just doing that. And ammo is so scarce in this game that you're going to want to be using other things than your gun all the time.
All this complicated dashing around, you're using blood punches, you're using your grenade, you're using your frost grenade, you're using your shotgun with the hook, you're switching between weapon mods at will, going for finishers, using the chainsaw, all of this and the flamethrower and everything. That is easily the strongest part of the combat, just all those different things that you have in your arsenal.
Yeah,
But it
actually,
makes it really hard to just casually go in there, because if you haven't played in a little bit and you go back in, you're like, oh my lord. There's just a lot.
Actually, I didn't find myself switching weapon mods all that much in Eternal. It was definitely more a thing in the DLC. For most of the guns, it felt like there were upgrades you really should go for just because of the way the combat is designed. Like with the introduction of weak points, well, why would you go for micro missiles on the assault rifle when you can have sniper mod
I
where
love the micro missiles. I mean, I mostly use the sniper, but I love the micro missiles.
I don't think I ever used micro missiles in my playthrough, actually. I think I only bought them because I ran out of things to buy.
the shotgun that you get, most people probably grabbed the sticky bombs first.
Yep.
I didn't use auto shotty at all. The DLC has, I think, a questionable way of forcing you to swap mods. And then there are some guns where it just doesn't feel like it matters as much. Like the minigun, you can either have a shield or you can do more damage. The ballista has two different alternate fire methods that I really don't know which one is better. The rocket launcher lock-on's really useful.
The 3 burst was just insane. I don't even remember the other mod.
Just like 2016, I barely touched the plasma rifle at all.
It was so good in Eternal.
I sort of humored the developers by pulling it out for the enemies with shields to blow them up, because you get that little explosive bit. But I honestly didn't use it that much. I just stuck with mostly the super shotty in this game, but also I pulled out the regular shotgun a lot to do grenade lobbing.
I didn't touch the plasma rifle at all in 2016. I didn't like how it felt. I didn't like the design of it in 2016, and it just felt like the weakest gun in your arsenal. I mean, okay, yeah, the pistol was the weakest gun in 2016, but the plasma rifle just felt really weak. In Eternal, I actually used it a lot more, not just on shielded enemies, but it was just a good weapon for, I just need to deal damage right now.
The overheat mod.
Yeah, the overheat.
It was really good.
The overheat mod is so useful.
I used that a couple of times for sure.
It's definitely better designed. The Ghostbuster mod is really annoying in that it slows you down. Another thing that I think is worth talking about for the weapons is I think they helped make it more clear when a weapon is ready to fire. A lot of the weapons in Doom have a cooldown period between shots is the best way to explain it.
That's a very deep core element of Eternal. It's all about cooldowns. Just managing everything. You're making sure that you're good on dashes. You're making sure if you have a blood punch or not, if you have a grenade ready. It's all about focusing your timing around all of those different parts of your kit.
The cooldowns of the weapons were easy to follow, but the cooldowns on blood punch, grenades, and the flame belch were a little hard to keep track of, because most of the time when I'm in the middle of a fight, I'm paying attention to all the enemies on the screen and the middle of my reticle, because I need to make sure things are there. And so the little tiny HUD elements that will pop up around your reticle, I don't really notice most of the time, and then I'm definitely not looking at the bottoms of the screen for the icons there. And I think there's a little bit of a sound notification when things are ready, but with everything else going on, like music blaring and enemies screaming at you,
There definitely is for the chainsaw. I don't know if there is one for the others.
I think they could have done that better somehow. Maybe if the HUD had some kind of effect glow to it. So, like, if your blood punch was ready, maybe having like a loud blood splatter sound effect and then like a little blood splatter UI element. So, to like draw your eye down there to make sure that you know that it's going on. Maybe something like that. I'm not positive because I'm not a UI designer, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Most of the time I could glance down and see if something was ready or not, or I just click it and I was like, okay, it's not ready, whatever, I'll just wait here a little bit. In terms of the early game curve, like what I was talking about, the how it gets really hard until it gets easier, I feel like that apexes when you finally have to fight 2 Doom Hunters at once. Those are the guys on sleds. That boss fight was a bitch because I wasn't quite used to the gameplay yet and I was getting my ass kicked. It didn't help that I didn't have any extra lives, so every time I died, I would just have to restart the entire fight. It definitely gets easier after that because I think after that, I had a much better handle on how to play, especially once I got used to quick swapping. That definitely made the game a lot easier.
Quick swapping, yeah, watching you do that and just kind of tear through enemies was pretty neat. The Doom Hunter fight, you approach that from a completely different way than I do. Whenever a Doom Hunter pops up, like I whip out the plasma rack when I focus on the shield, whereas you were focusing on the sled. I know that's one of its weaknesses, but just, not really thinking. Like you could have 2 players in Doom Eternal walk into a fight and they'd go about it. They take down the same enemy in different ways. And I just think that's a pretty good method of design.
Yeah, that's a nice aspect of Doom's design, especially with the weapon wheel and stuff like that, because a lot of people will use different weapons and different attachments and things to fight enemies in different ways, and that's fun to see.
I always use the rocket launcher. I'd shoot the sleds of them, and sometimes I'd use the plasma rifle, but yeah, mostly I'd just try to blow up the shed.
Once I got used to it, the way I would get rid of them was I would take the super shotty, basically barrel stuff the sled, and then dash away from them before they could hit me. Did I say shed? No, I said sled, right?
No, I said shed, and I was like, shit.
You said shed? I remember the first time I played was when the game had just come out, so the Marauder was brand new, and I really struggled with that. I know they nerfed the Marauder at some point, and I honestly think they might have nerfed it a little too hard. I didn't have an issue at all with it, really. I'd never died to the Marauder.
They nerfed it a lot. Yeah, it went from being like really good to pretty good.
The only time in the entire game I think I died to a Marauder was because there was that and like 3 other enemies I was also trying to juggle. And for people who didn't know that the Marauder was nerfed, the way that they nerfed him was he goes into his vulnerable phase more often, and he'll do that sort of green eyes lunge thing more often as well. So he'll tend to do it even when he's within the wrong range, where before you would have to get him at that optimal range before he would even attempt it. And then he wouldn't ever be vulnerable otherwise, but now he'll sometimes run left or right and you can hit him even when he's not in the green eyes period, and that makes it a lot easier to fight. I think that it was just a little over-tuned. He seems a little too easy now.
The other thing about the Marauder is the indication that he's stunned. That's really helpful. I didn't play the game until after he got nerfed, but that was fine. And I actually think that the DLC, the Ancient Gods, like, yeah, most people probably know, like, you have to fight 2 Marauders at once, but I think it found a better way to utilize the Marauder in the Ancient Gods than they did in the base campaign, where, like, he kind of shows up in by himself in like a smaller rooms and you have to one-on-one him. Like, yeah, it's hard, but it's nowhere near as difficult as having to take on a Marauder and a Revenant, which was a problem I had that I died to a lot on the final level, which I think is like the second to last time a Marauder shows up. Just that fight and then having a Revenant running around at the same time was really tough for me to deal with.
I guess as far as the other bosses, I didn't find them not that obviously besides the Icon of Sin, I didn't find them very memorable. Like, they weren't bad, just like annoying.
It's hard to beat the Cyber Demon fight in 2016. That's still one of my favorites in the past like 10 years. It really sticks with me, especially because when I replayed it for 2016, I had that moment where I had like 3 HP for the majority of the fight, and I felt like a fucking badass being able to beat it with that.
Don't get me wrong, Rockworm Bionicle dude was cool, but like,
They were And I talked about this in 2016. When they throw two of them at you, it was a little hard to keep track of both of them at the same time.
The Con Maker is honestly just kind of a pushover.
That was really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, the Con Maker was not a great fight. And neither was the Icon of Sin, honestly, because you're not really fighting the Icon of Sin. You're mostly fighting the enemies around it until you can get enough crap to, like, destroy them.
It was memorable because it looked cool.
Because also, it just felt like they were trying to do a set piece, right? So it was like, you have all of this shit that they keep respawning at you to take him out, and so it's like, okay, I just gotta wait until I can get more ammo. There was a point when I was playing it where there was just no enemies around, and I have to keep waiting until I could get one for a chainsaw to get some ammo to fight the guy. And I'm sure it's harder on harder difficulties because you have more enemies to juggle with that do more damage, but it's the actual, like, fighting the Icon of Sin was not interesting. In terms of overall enemy amounts, I think there was only a couple of enemies that I felt didn't really fit all that well, and from what I understand, they tried to change them up a little bit in the DLCs, like the Prowler. It's only slightly larger than a lot of fodder demons, so it was hard to differentiate that it wasn't a fodder demon most of the time, and I ended up trying to slice it with my chainsaw and then not having enough stuff because it counts as a heavy enemy, so you would have to have 3 in your chainsaw, 3 pips in your chainsaw. I know they changed him in the DLCs by having him, like, imbue a curse on you, and then you have to deal with him a certain way before you can, like, continue going.
Yeah, but it's just awkward.
So they at least tried something different with it. I don't know if it was all that great. I think gargoyles don't really have a place. They're just fodder demons, so they're just like regular fodder, but they fly around a little bit, and they kind of felt like
Flying imp.
an imp. Yeah, and so they weren't that interesting, but I don't think they really were supposed to be. I just think it was a little excessive. And then I fucking hate the whiplash. That stupid snake thing with the chain, because it was one of the only enemies that I felt like the attack was hard to dodge because it was so much faster than other attacks. Like, a lot of enemies will have like a, big glowing projectile that makes it easy to dodge them, but the whiplash just whips at you. And it throws you away from them, too. So it wasn't fun to get thrown away from something that whipped you, and then they're hard to track because they're very thin, and they slither around a lot, so those weren't fun.
They go low to the ground. They sit there like 1 foot off the ground.
The Maker drones were kind of a joke. They're literally just pinatas. They're not an actual enemy type, basically, and
The Maker drones are, I think in the Codex, they're classified as like heavy demons, but they're basically just fodder demons.
yeah, because they die in one headshot. So they're super easy to deal with, and they basically make it so that you don't need to use your chainsaw at all. So it's like, okay, whatever. I know a lot of people don't like the Archvile. I really like the Archvile because of the way that it changes up the combat, because you're not just juggling enemies, you also got to juggle whether or not you want to go after that Archvile. The fact that he teleports around makes it a little more running around the arenas and stuff.
Whenever I realized that there was an Archvile on the battlefield, that was always like an oh shit moment, and I would immediately like stop whatever I was doing and try to find him, because summoning and enraging demons is a pretty big buff, and he's not great at attacking you, but him being like in that a demon support role that you need to take out, I think is a pretty nice addition. Whereas the summoner in 2016 is more annoying than anything else because she's really fast, and so it can be kind of hard to kill her, but like she only spawns imps.
I also like that with the Archvile, if it's going to spawn stuff, it has like a telegraph, so you can see the things becoming red and coming in. So it's like, okay, I need to go deal with this now, or else I'm going to have to fight these things. So that was very good. Doom Hunters after that initial fight are much more fun to fight. I think they're a fun enemy type.
Dread, I think I said they were my favorite, but they're also like my least favorite enemy to fight, because it felt like they wanted to have sort of the Baron of Hell before the Baron of Hell. Like, he jumps and he does like a splash attack, and it's basically a Hell Knight, except it leaves behind some like a little area that you can't go into for a second, because there's like some sort of energy there or whatever. Like, I know I liked his physical design, but the way he fits onto the battlefield just kind of felt lazy.
Yeah, he definitely just felt, and he acted a lot like a Hell Knight too. I think they did a better job of differentiating the Cyber Mancubus from the regular Mancubus in this game, with the fact that it spews out a bunch of acid all over the place. I think in 2016 it didn't do that, or it did something very minimal difference. But this one is actually like, oh, if I'm going to attack this thing, like, I need to stay away from it a little bit versus regular Mancubus. I also really enjoy the Arachnotrons. I think those are a great addition.
Yeah, they're really scary in the beginning game because you've got a lot less ammo, and taking out their turrets can be kind of hard when you're starting out. But like, by the time you get to the end, it's like, oh, an Arachnotron showed up, I don't need to worry about it. I'll just, disable their turret real quick, and then I'll go back to dealing with this tyrant.
And then I'm definitely going to have to give a shout out to Doom Eternal for having one of the coolest collector's editions ever. That convinced me to actually, for once, buy a collector's edition, which I've never done before. Having an actual Doom helmet is pretty cool.
The tutorials for all that stuff, like every time you face a new demon and it being like, hey, here's exactly how to kill me.
The amount of tutorial pop-ups in this game was really excessive. I understand that it's important to know all this information, but I feel like they could have presented it more. It also spoils the reveal of several enemies. There are times where I'll be walking through an area and then all of a sudden I'll get a pop-up for a new enemy type. It's like, oh, okay, I'm about to see this enemy type. I know that now. Maybe put it up after they do the little enemy introduction, but before I have to start fighting, like that would be a good time to do it.
Once you deal with the little zombies with shields and you realize that, hey, the plasma rifle basically evaporates them. When you get up to the Doom Hunter and it having that giant blue shield all over its body, that was a pretty obvious telegraph that, hey, the plasma rifle is also going to work really well against this.
That was definitely what I complained about at that exact moment, too. It was like, oh, look, it's got a blue shield. And then it's like, look, it has a blue shield. It's like, I know!
Yeah, and so building more demons with obvious weak spots, but some of them I feel like the Caco demon, the grenade in its mouth is a weak spot I don't think any other demon has. And it's a little hard.
It almost got boring, It was no other enemy just had this.
Caco demons were a little easy to deal with, yeah.
Yeah. There was no other enemy that just had this secret gimmick. And it was like, oh, one spawns in. I got hit by a Caco demon maybe twice in the entire game because I just pull out the shotgun with the sticky bomb, just boom, and done.
The only other one I could think of like that is Pinky can be killed in one blood punch, but the difference being blood punches is something that you don't always have and that you need to build up to, whereas dealing with a Caco demon, you're always going to have one of those little grenade things from your shotgun. I think also there's a couple of weapon upgrades that end up outshining suit abilities. So there was, once you get the 5 grenade lob before it overheats thing for your shotgun, it's way easier to just lob 5 grenades into a group of enemies than use your shoulder grenade. And so you can just use your shoulder grenade for the ice bomb. And then when you get the fire chain for your meat hook, there's basically no reason to use flame belch anymore.
Even after you get the flaming meat hook, the flame belch still has its place because you can only hit one enemy with the flaming meat hook.
Yes, you can only use the meat hook on one enemy at a time, but you get so much armor from that enemy that you don't really need to be using flame belch much, and it regenerates much, much faster than flame belch, so you can just keep using it on a bunch of enemies instead of waiting for flame belch to regenerate.
I still use the flame belch a ton, especially if there's a group of powder demons. My strategy would be spray them in flame, drop a grenade or 2, and then leave. And I'd come back in 5 seconds, and it would just be this giant shiny pile of armor for me.
I would still use flame belch, but it felt mostly like a novelty at that point, because I was using the flaming chain so much that I didn't have to worry about having to use flame belch at all. So I feel like maybe they could have balanced that together a little bit better.
The BFG also got kind of nerfed a little bit. In 2016, there'd constantly be BFG ammo everywhere, and it was a delete all gun. In Eternal, ammo is much, much scarcer, and it's also, if you've got a super heavy demon, it won't kill them unless the main ball that you fire hits them directly.
The BFG still has a weird place in this, and I think it had a little bit of a weird place in 2016 as well. It feels like there are pretty obvious tells for when they want you to be using it instead of just having it as a last resort when you want to use it yourself, because there is so scarce amounts of ammo for it that whenever the ammo shows up, it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be one of those times when they're going to want me to use it. And I feel like maybe they could have come up with a better system for giving you ammo for the BFG without making it that one size kills all kind of thing. I also think that was a problem with the Crucible.
I thought the Crucible was so awkward. It just didn't really have a good place.
One of the big issues with fuck you weapons in video games is that unless they're end game rewards where it's here's the final level, go nuts, it's really hard to get the players to use them, because despite the fact that there was a ton of ammo for it in 2016 and it was super strong, I always just kept it around in case I don't know, things could get worse in this fight, so what if I need it later? and it ended up being where like I used it maybe 2 or 3 times the entire time.
I didn't use it much in 2016 because it wasn't part of my weapon wheel. I forgot that it was bound to like T, so I just never used it. But at least with Eternal, it's on your weapon wheel, so you know it's there.
Yeah, and in Eternal, like it was very much a I don't know, things could get worse in a moment, so I'm going to just hang on to this BFG shot that I've got, and maybe things will get better. And it's a really common play style for a lot of players, and I don't think developers have figured out the best way to get you to deal with that. There's this dungeon crawler game, like well, and like there's this one weapon that's instantly defeats any boss you use it on. But like you can only use it once, so a lot of players like they'll just hoard it until they get to the final boss if they end up getting it and use it on the final boss, whereas other weapons may get shafted and you just don't use it.
Doom's story is never exactly its strong suit. It's always very simplistic. Even 2016, they went pretty simplistic. It was like, you wake up, demons are invading Mars, you need to stop them. They don't really go much further than that. They sort of hint at some greater things, but it's very simple. Eternal, they try to go a little too deep, I think.
Yeah, it just made it boring and hard to follow.
They introduce a lot of elements, so it's like they introduce the Makers, who are this race of like angelic super beings. And then there was they introduced the whole Sentinel War thing, which they'd hinted at in 2016, but they sort of go into more detail with like the Betrayer.
There's so little that they actually give you information on. I read through a lot of the logs and stuff because I was curious, but like your game storytelling cannot be reliant on reading.
I think they do a pretty good job of not having to make you read. It's sort of like original Star Wars kind of thing where they talk about Clone Wars, where it doesn't matter to the plot.
That's true.
And they could maybe go into it later. So like the Betrayer being there is just like, okay, he's this mysterious figure that's sort of from your past, and he's chosen to be here, which sort of mirrors Doomguy's own thing about at the end of 64, where he chooses to stay in hell. They go into Doomguy's origin, where like he was fighting demons outside of the Maker Arena thingy, and then he's trained by them to become a Sentinel, and he usurps the Sentinels as like their strongest member and whatever. It's a little too much all at once, I think. There's just a lot of different plot threads they're throwing in. And especially that one feels like, hey, this is the flashback level. It's like, I don't really care. With 2016, it felt a lot like, there's all this shit and I'm the janitor. Like, I'm going to fix all this shit that you've caused. With Eternal, there's so much of the plot is like, you can't do this. Stop doing that. You're not supposed to be doing this. Stop it. It was like, fuck off. I'm just going to do it. Like, you're not going to stop me from doing it. Like, they could have written a little bit better than just everybody telling him he shouldn't be doing it. Everybody you meet except for like Samuel Hayden. And even in 2016, Samuel Hayden was like, you shouldn't be doing this.
It wasn't heavy-handed, I guess.
I do like some of the cutscenes. I think that are really good. The opening cutscene, the radio broadcast, and you pan over from Mars to Earth. That ends with like Doomguy cocking a shotgun. I don't think there's any better way to get you pumped up to play a Doom game. That's probably one of the best introductory cutscenes, just introductions to a game ever. Just, you could probably show that scene to somebody without any context at all and just be like, yeah, that's what Doom is.
The mission at the beginning of Mars Core, when you're like walking through all of the people inside the ship, and they're just like, let him through, why? And then you just grab the guy's key card around his neck and just drag him over to the thing, and then you just like borrow one of the random UAC guys' plasma rifle. I'll be taking that. So I really like Doomguy's man cave, and I think it's a lot of fun when you go down into the hub area.
Yeah, a little workshop. This is his own workshop.
You can see he was working on his old suit, and he's got like some guitars, and he keeps music and his little things. But also, I feel like that's a little different characterization than we see in the game of what Doomguy is, because pretty much the only thing we see Doomguy ever do in the campaign is have that single-minded focus of killing every demon. And so the fact that they are implying that he has some off time where he just hangs out and is like a normal guy doesn't really fit with what they've shown us.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
I think it's funny, and I don't hate it. Like, I know a lot of people were not happy with it, and I think it's funny.
It's a bit of a weird juxtaposition. I think the developers kind of wanted to hone in, Doomguy's the player. He doesn't care about the plot. He only cares about killing demons. When he's not killing demons, he does this other stuff that the player might be doing. And so it's weird because like there are these, everyone's talking about these universe shattering consequences that could happen. And, meanwhile we're running around collecting Happy Meal toys in between fights, and
Which I love. I love those little enemy demon toys. I would love to get a real one, like a Pinky or an Arachnotron or like a Revenant, or I would love to get a bunch of them. They're all really good. A Marauder would be really fun.
it's definitely weird to, be running around being like, oh, look, I found a new album for my man cave. And it's like, yeah, but maybe we should focus on the demons. I'm not saying it's bad. I did enjoy looking for the collectibles for the most part. Tarzanabad was really awful in that regard. There's definitely a bit of a difference between what you're doing as a player and, the man cave and what the story is trying to present to you.
What it's called is narrative dissonance, which is when what you're doing is different from what the plot says. And I think it's fine. There's a certain amount of what I will forgive in a game before I decide to think it's like, this is kind of weird. I usually draw the line in games where it's like your character's a super badass, but then in any cutscenes, they just get their ass kicked by someone else. And that never happens in this. And the overall plot is fine, and I think having downtime is important for the gameplay to have moments. I guess it makes sense that you as the player are having downtime now, so maybe that's when Doomguy also gets his downtime, is in between these unstoppable, crazy amounts of murder. So maybe it works there. I don't really care most of the time if a mechanic is fun, how it fits into the story. So it's like, oh, mechanically, why does performing a finisher on a demon, like, restore your blood punch? It's like, I don't care, it works. It fits with the loop. I don't need to have every game be Destiny, where they have to have like a 13-page lore document on why everything in the game happens. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, why does Flame Belch make demons drop armor? Who cares? I like seeing demons.
It's because they shit themselves, and that shit is so hard, it's like diamond, and you wear that.
And I would have liked it if they used more BFG Division and Rip and Tear and such.
Yeah, their remix of BFG Division was not that great. It's not bad by any means, but I didn't actually know it was the BFG Division until one point when I was like walking between a hallway and I could hear the couple of notes. It was like, oh, okay. You guys had pointed it out that it was a remix of BFG Division earlier, and I didn't believe you because it doesn't sound like it.
They play the normal one. When you're on your ship, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, demons have invaded it, and you get attacked just when you portal back in.
I remembered that level being more interesting when you actually have to fight all the demons that have come into your Fortress of Doom, and it's like only fodder demons. It was super easy to deal with.
They literally just sent a bunch of imps.
Because that's one of my favorite cliches, or maybe not cliche is the right word, but it's one of my favorite things to throw into a game where you have this hub area that you're in for most of the game, and then it's your safe space. And so throwing enemies into your safe space is like, wait a second, this isn't right. This feels weird, but like you're used to your safe space now, so you know it like the back of your hand, so you know how to get around it really easily. I like that in a lot of games when they do that, so that was fun. It just feels like they could have done a little bit more with it and made it into like a miniature level, but they didn't.
Yeah, it was like this quick little 30-second encounter. And that was it? What? They're sending more, right? And then you're like, no, okay, all right.
Feels like they could have done a little bit more with Samuel Hayden. He sort of betrays you at the end of the first game, and then you just kind of forgive him in this one, and he's already dead when you find him.
Yeah, it's a little weird that it's never brought up. It's especially weird because like the first time he gets brought up again in the game it's like, hey, maybe the guy who fucking betrayed us can help us.
And we also find out from one of the guys that was like, oh, Sam was planning on giving it back to you. It's like, really? Because didn't seem like it in 2016. He's just like a 180 on his personality.
It's doubly weird because I always kind of got the impression from 2016 that as soon as we were done dealing with the demons, we were gonna, punch Samuel in the face. And that just, he really needed some sort of comeuppance.
When you're in the flashback level, they do sort of a thing where it's like, oh, here's where Doomguy's getting his powers, and there's this mysterious cloaked figure. It's like, oh no, who could it be? This man who sounds exactly like Dr. Samuel Hayden. I wonder who it could be. And then they don't reveal it in this. They don't reveal it till the DLC. It's like, who the fuck else would it be? There's only one person that sounds like Darren DePaul in this game.
Yeah, that was not a surprise at all. The voice acting is pretty solid. I mean, it is a Doom game, so who cares about voice acting? But there was never anything that made me think, wow, that's really bad.
I also really liked in the flashback where Doomguy is first being sent to the Coliseum, you actually see his classic helmet in the cutscene. With me, I was already wearing the classic outfit at that point, so I didn't notice, but I thought that was cool that they make the original outfit canon.
They clearly put a lot of effort into designing the game. It was definitely a game made to be played, and it was made with a specific group of people in mind, which is really nice because there's a lot of games these days that try to do kind of everything, and at their best they have like one standout element and a bunch of other stuff that ranges from okay to
Ubisoft games. Yeah.
yeah, that ranges from okay to bad. The first game I played that really did that was, I guess, Skyrim. And like Skyrim's not a bad game, but I don't think any of the mechanics in it really get past good. But, you know, like you're not playing Skyrim for its stealth or its, you know, amazing combat. You're playing Skyrim because you just saw a new mod on Nexus and you want to try it out.
Someone wanted to know what we thought about Doomguy speaking in the campaign. I think it's fine.
Didn't like it. It was okay.
I think it sets him apart from just being a silent protagonist, and it also helps with the characterization that Doomguy could be speaking, but he is choosing not to speak, because we can understand just from his actions what his personality is. It's sort of a reaffirming 2016 in that flashback. It's like the only things he says is that there are demons with huge guts that need to be ripped and torn apart.
That's actually a callback to this old Marvel comic they made back in the 90s, which is basically like a single issue thing. And you just watched as like the Doom guy kept talking about like how he needed bigger, better guns to rip out the demon's guts. And it was just kind of a cool nod that the people who made Doom Eternal were like, so we're going to have Doomguy talk. Is there anything we can use as like a reference? And it's like, oh, there's this old comic. And I think that line that he says is actually pretty much ripped straight from the comic.
Cool. Yeah, it's nice that they're going and including as much old Doom stuff as possible to keep it canon, because I know Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 64, and I guess this comic are also all canon. The only thing we have left now is where Doom 3 fits in all of it.
I think it's implemented really well in that if you never know about the comic, it's still a, oh, cool, Doomguy talks moment. If you know about the comic, it's doubly fun because you get the reference.
Doom Eternal is a game. The people making Doom just know what people want out of it. There was interviews with Hugo Martin talking about elements of Eternal versus 2016 and stuff like that, and like why things were changed and why things shaped the way they were. And just the way he talks about it, he knows what makes it fun. With a lot of game directors, I think they will get a director who's good at writing a game or something and not necessarily making a game. And there's merit to that, obviously, because people like heavy story-driven games. But with Hugo Martin, listening to him talk about what he did and didn't like about 2016 and Eternal are like exactly what I don't like or do like. It feels good to know that the person who made the game also feels the same way as the people playing the game, so that when they go to do it again, if they make another Doom game, they're going to improve on that stuff or change it and try something new. And so it's good to know that stuff, and it's not like some other companies where it's like, oh, we're trying something new because we wanted to do something new regardless of the fact that our audience really enjoyed how it was previously. We're going to change it.
343.
So it's good to hear. Yeah, I wasn't going to name anything specifically, but yeah. Oh my god. 343 Industries, just they didn't know what they were doing for a long time, and even now they keep making decisions that are like, why
I guess it's better now that we know co-op and Forge aren't going to be in the game instead of...
I guess it's better that they tell us now so we don't end up being really hyped and not having it, so we can sufficiently throw our hype out the window and just go, what the fuck.
Yeah.
How do we end Real Thoughts with a song? Special thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel as well, you'll get your own custom avatar that'll go at the end of the videos that you help support that month.